Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, welcome to Mavs Party. It's the first one I've had actually following one of these games at night because it's the first night preseason game the Mavericks have had this year. Changed locations. My wife kicked me out of my office and told me to come downstairs here. So we'll see how this goes over the course of the regular season. You can see that I did not clear off my kitchen table well enough, but maybe I'll work on that. It's preseason for everybody. The first thing to note, if you are joining this room for the first time, if you're a returning listener and participant and don't remember how the whole thing works, there's a link that's pinned in the YouTube comments that you can click on, and it pulls you into a waiting room. And the whole premise of this show is I want to hear what other Mavs fans are thinking. For the longest time, I used to spend a significant portion of post-game for every Mavericks game just like arguing with people on Twitter. And like, that's no fun. And we inevitably ended up finding the green room. I think it was locker room almost 3 years ago. And then that transitioned into Spotify Live eventually. And Spotify Live went dead last year. So I had to convert over to YouTube. If you're afraid of showing your face on camera, you shouldn't be, because I do it. And people for some reason tune in and want to see me. I'm really excited to talk about this game because it was a whole lot of fun. For a quick recap for anybody that happened to miss it, with Luka Doncic out, Kyrie Irving and Josh Green took the lead. The Mavericks jumped out to an early double-digit lead and really never let up. There, we saw a whole bunch of different lineup combinations. Some guys didn't look great. Other guys looked, pretty freaking amazing. And we're going to talk about both, I'm sure, over the course of the next at least 30 minutes. Be sure to tell your friends to join this show. It's still preseason, and honestly, I don't expect some of our shows to pick up more until probably after Christmas. But we're going to have a good time in here. So coming up first, we got my guy Chris Haley, longtime participant in the show. Chris, what's going on, my man?
Hey, nothing. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Hopefully you enjoyed your time away from the Mavericks. And I also hope you're not a Rangers fan, because today was painful.
Dude, oh my God. That was crazy. Like, they were up 4-2, and then that Jose Altuve, is that his name?
Altuve, yeah.
Altuve, yeah. Yeah, that was just that. Wow. And it's just crazy to think about back in 2011 when they were in that six game and they just one strike away from winning it all. That's crazy. But yeah, that's a heartbreaker. But hold on, my bulldog's coming in this room here.
All right. Yeah, okay. You're welcome on the show. Mine are on the couch.
Yeah, his name's Luca, by the way. My bulldog.
Fantastic.
But anyway, I saw the game. Of course, next Wednesday is the first game. And do you think, there's no way to know. Is Luca, this is the last preseason game. Do you think Luca might really be playing in the season opener? It's going to be on national TV.
I do. I think until we have reason to think that there's I don't want to say it's not a serious injury, but until they're worried about him doing something that would make it worse, I think we sort of have to assume that the Mavericks are going to play Luka until we hear otherwise. Because
They
I
give
think
him all the rest he can have because he's been, playing all summer. And if he did have they diagnosed it as a mild calf strain, just let him rest as long as possible. I don't know how much he's been practicing, but
right.
I'll actually be not at next Wednesday's game, but the first home game. I usually go to the first home game of the season, so I guess the Nets. Me and my son got tickets to that game, so be looking forward to that. I just really looking forward to Mavs basketball. Like, I'm excited about this team. I know there's a lot of familiar faces. I mean, of course, we got to see Dwight Powell out there, and I know Tim Hardaway Jr. made a few shots tonight, but this is what
he's taking a lot of shots.
Lots of impulsive. He's such a one-dimensional player, man. Like, it's just. I'm like, let's don't do this again. We've seen this, okay? Like, I want to see something different here. So if you come in, if you're on fire, I get it. Just keep lighting it up, but don't just come in and chunk shots up just to chunk shots up. I mean, unless you're playing really good on defense, but he's not really a good defensive player, I don't think. So
yeah,
but
no, it's there's an effort thing involved. I mean, the Tim part of it is frustrating because when his shots don't go, it makes everything feel worse. But then there's also sort of, and Nick Angstadt asked him about this a couple days ago. There's no clarity in his role. And at least as far as Tim is telling us, and, Kidd kind of said one thing just at the start of the preseason he said that to Mark Stein, basically that he was going to be coming off the bench. And then during media day, Tim Hardaway is like, this is the first time hearing about it. And all of us got like Christian Wood flashbacks, which was really neat. I think guys just play, anybody in any work situation performs better when they're sure of their role. It's just the nature of it. And I think the Mavericks, Tim talked about this in his media day session. Now he wasn't sure if he was going to be here. And I think elements of that result in him being frustrated, and that I'm sure he's going to go out and play his hardest. That's not what I mean, but it's just, if there's uncertainty about if you're going to be here, so of course you're going to go out and fire up shots. Of course.
I could just sense it. If they're not going to extend Josh Green, that they're preparing him and Tim Hardaway Jr. to be in a trade package this year. And they absolutely would, if they're not going to extend Josh Green, they're absolutely going to trade him this year because they're not going to have, I'm not saying he's as good as Jalen Brunson, but we're not going to go through that road again. So, but yeah, I like what I see out of Josh Green today. He scored the most points. Derek Lively, the second. I'm really excited about him. I know he's a rookie, but he's damn athletic, and he's just. I would like to see Rashawn Holmes be like the second string center, not.
Yeah, it's still Dwight.
Well, of course it has to be. I love him to death. He's a good person, and he's a good solid role guy and all. But I mean, I don't know, man. We got to have some more solid bigs on the floor.
So Dwight played 14 minutes, had 5 points, 6 boards, and 3 assists, along with 3 turnovers.
He still got hit in the face right as Grant Williams got hit in the nose, on the bridge in the nose, and I saw the instant replay that Dwight Powell looked like he got hit in the face at the same time. It's just like, how many times has he been hit in the face? But it's good to see Seth Curry back on the team, and I'm just looking forward to the Mavs playing again. I'm feeling optimistic about this season. Well, hell, even Shaq didn't he predict that the Mavs are going to be the champions? Or did you hear about that?
I did.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reconciliation going on between how the Mavericks ended last year, how the Mavericks have kind of continued to look during the preseason, paired with all the statistical models. A lot of the database stuff is showing that the Mavericks on paper could be quite good. Now, how that actually works itself out on the floor is something entirely different.
And I didn't look into the Abu Dhabi games. Even this game, it's just preseason. I mean, as long as we get at least one and you win the last one, you kind of go into the season feeling good. And Luka, most likely, like I said, he'd probably be healthy anyway. And then we'll have Kyrie's not acting crazy. I mean, I think he's going to be he's comfortable in Dallas. Obviously, he's on that extension. So I haven't even really crossed my mind about him being like the way he was in Brooklyn. I just think with him not playing in a big market, that's going to do good for him. Like big market, like New York, kind of all the drama that was going on in there. So we shouldn't have to worry about that. I'm just looking forward to this season. So hopefully we'll get a win, because I don't think the Spurs will be good this year, even with Wembanyama. But
I'm watching a clip of him right now. All right, so they're playing the Warriors.
The Warriors, yeah.
He guards Andrew Wiggins on the perimeter, so over in like the up in the top right corner. Wiggins drives center on him. Wemby stays with him the whole time, laterally, which is what's impressive. He doesn't get beat. Blocks Wiggins into next week. Runs down the floor and gets a top of the key 3-pointer, which he splashes. And it's like evolutionary KP. In a way that is just laugh out loud.
Derek Lively II, his very first NBA game, real NBA game, is going to be against like Wemby. I mean, baptism by fire, you know. So
that's right.
I mean, they're both rookies, but I think we get. I don't remember the last time we won like the first first game of the season. It's been a while.
Well, they just get off to these weird starts, and it's annoying. And, I do think
we'll win the first one, and then we'll win the second one, and then I don't know. Just last few years, just not been. It just hasn't felt right. Really, since 2019.
It was the Hawks game of kids' opening year where they just got blasted on live television.
Was that 2 years ago?
That was 2 years ago. Where it was like, oh no.
Feels like we're always opening against like the Suns or the Hawks, but now it's the Spurs. So let's get a win next Wednesday, and then let's have a good season. Go Mavs!
All right, man. Thanks for joining us. Hope you come back whenever we do this on Wednesday. Talk soon.
Sure will.
Okay, coming up next is my man Leo. Leo, what's going on, dude?
Hi, the mic sound good?
Yeah, you sound great.
All right. Just to get off on some good vibes, because I might bring the vibes down later. Can we talk about how good Josh Green looked? As a Josh Green stockholder, I feel like the Wolf of Wall Street right now, man. I'm feeling good.
Well, it's interesting.
Josh Green.
That was the Josh Green statement pay me game. The Mavericks, I think, have 3-ish days until the ability to extend him goes away. And then from there, he would go into next offseason as a restricted free agent, which those sorts of things, as we saw from the offseason this year for different teams, can get a little uncomfortable. I'm of the opinion that what they should simply do is offer him a deal in the range of what Grant Williams got, and then just everybody go home happy, because it's a tradable deal if the Mavericks want it. It's a lot of money for Josh Green. He scored 9 points a game last year, right? I don't necessarily see him jumping to like 13 points a game. It's just it's the way that the team is structured. He's going to have good games and he's going to have bad games. And it's just kind of the nature of how the team's set up. Like, he's going to be like a 4th or 5th option at best. Are you serious right now, dog? We're live.
Nah, man, live. The dog's got it.
That's
the
right.
Dog's got the vibes right. Your dog knows it's Josh Green Island time.
Well,
I mean, if we think about if we just put this in like a little bubble, if we think back to last year, did you think Josh Green was going to have anything similar to the year he had last year? Mind you, it wasn't like an amazing year, but it was like Josh Green looked like a donut his first year. And
he was a non-contributing 0, and then kid gave him life. So I'm very pleased with the progression of Josh Green.
And I don't know, FIFA looked like he looked more assertive. He looked like he enjoyed playing like the main defensive, anchor. And now he has a big man who can, block.
Help clean up anything that he needs help with. Yeah, no, I agree.
And speaking of said big man, damn.
What do you think?
I'm brand new to the NBA. I don't know what a big man feels like, though I'm not sure any Mavs fan knows what a big man feels like outside of Tyson Chandler. He looks awesome. He did a behind the back like dunk.
The problem with having a big man in the Wemby draft is like there's always going to be like pure comparison points, and he's not like at all like that, and it's not fair to him. But for what the Mavericks need, he's fantastic, and he's showing me more than I thought he was going to be able to early. And is he going to go through rough patches? Absolutely. I just keep pointing out how through all the preseason games, this is the first time he actually got to play people that were his size or smaller versus, both against Rudy Gobert and then against Tavares over with Real Madrid. And then he plays Wemby on opening night. So it's like he's really getting a education in big man basketball in a hurry. And he's mostly held his own. He's not been embarrassed. He's going to make mistakes. I think that part's fine. But there's just a lot to be bullish about with him, because I think everyone was super worried about fouling. And, outside of the first game, I've not really had any fouling concerns.
And I feel like it's having players like Josh and DJJ and Grant who will probably foul before he gets a chance to, but they can still at least stand in front of their man a couple seconds and not completely let Derek Lively completely on his own.
Yeah.
Which will probably feel better than what he had to deal with at Duke.
Yeah.
And I heard you guys talking about starting DJJ. If he starts, does that mean Luka and one of Luka or Kai are always going to be double teamed at all times on offense?
Maybe. I don't know how you really defend the Mavericks. I think you try to really punish the Mavericks with scoring and making them work defensively at this rate with the team that they have. But there's enough from this game. We needed to see a good game because the two Timberwolves games were really, unfortunately, awful. And so it's just nice to get a win with this game and see enough. So I'm very pleased.
And for all the people who do not like Dwight Powell, we have a +5 in box plus minus tonight. Do not ask me what our other big men have.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a rough game. But I want to see Holmes with different people. Holmes has kind of had it keeps getting stuck with particular lineups. He's not exactly a defensive stalwart, but he's also capable of a lot of different things. Maxey was brutal tonight. I don't know what we do about Maxey, but also not needing Maxey is nice. So if he ever comes alive, it'll be helpful.
You guys know way more basketball than I do.
Thought he looked... It's basketball. You're fine.
I thought he looked fine. He stayed in front of his man. What is it that bad to not ask Maxey to be the best defensive player on the team?
Sorry, my dog is now drinking. My dog is now drinking water in the background. If that's getting picked up, it's nice that they don't need it. I would simply like him to look a little more. I don't know, just
alive.
More. Yeah, he's not looked very good in these preseason games.
He drove to the basket. That was interesting.
It's an adventure every time he puts the ball on the floor.
Hey man, 82 games to go. We could always use a nice Maxey game. Well,
that's right. Sure thing.
Have a good night, Mr. Kirk.
All right, you too. All right, before I bring Brandon up on stage here, just want to make a quick note or plea, whatever you want to call it. If you could do me a favor and go ahead and like the stream. We have a lot of fun in these shows, particularly it's actually more winning is obviously better, but I think the shows are a little more amusing when the Mavericks lose because everyone comes in here and vents. For this, I think there's just a palpable sense of relief that the Mavericks were able to do something, which was nice. All right, my next guest, Brandon, he pulled himself off stage. We'll see if he's able to come back up. Otherwise, we might be having just a very short show, which I may not even publish to the podcast feed. But yeah, this is something we do virtually every show. Sometimes it gets really testy and we go 2 hours because people just want to vent. But tonight, I think it's nice to kind of get that one particular win. It's a feel-good situation. The Mavericks needed that, at least in my opinion. And then from there, we can head on into the regular season, just knowing that they have their work cut out for them after last year. But I think that the structure of the team is at least, that I like what they've tried to build, and that's pretty important to me. If you want to go ahead, if you guys could do me a favor again, if you could like the stream, I would very much appreciate that. If you could consider subscribing to the channel, I would very much appreciate that as well. For those of you listening on the podcast, that'd be great. I'm going to answer a quick question here, and then I'm going to bring Micah up on stage. But then I'm also going to cut to a quick podcast, basically ad read. Thanks so much for hanging out here. And I will start up here in just a second. We're going to cut to those ads.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Saturday, Christmas comes early, only on Peacock.
Unbelievable!
Bills, Chargers, an exclusive NFL game live in primetime. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern, exclusively on Peacock.
All right, Nav asks in the chat, do you think they can continue to play this style of offense when Luka comes back? This is kind of the existential question of the Mavericks. Josh Bowe and I talked about it a little bit on our podcast that we did, the kind of recap show. And what a couple of people, I'm not the only person who has suggested this, but one thing I've been kind of high on since the end of the year is that I would love it if they used Kyrie as a pace pusher early, letting him doing most of the ball handling, and then letting Luka do what he likes to do in the first quarter, which is basically ruthlessly attack the rim and basically set the table and see what's going on and just use him, like basically be a human battering ram. I would like it if they did that in the fourth quarter with Luka. His minutes distribution is very first quarter heavy. Then he plays the second 6 minutes of the second quarter. Then he plays most of the third, and then he plays like the second half of the fourth. I would, Nick Angstad's talked about this a couple of times. I would like for them to redistribute the minutes because then I think they could play this way a little more frequently because the ball just pops more. I appreciate what Luka wants to do. It obviously works, but if I also think that they could afford to try something new. And I think it gets other people involved earlier. And not just on the tail end of pick and rolls where they catch and shoot. I mean, earlier in the play, earlier in the action, following a rebound. So I'd be very into that. So, all right. So I'm going to bring up Micah. Let's see what Micah has to say. Micah, how you doing tonight?
Good, Kirk. How you been?
I'm all right. I am in preseason form in that I am still getting the groove of like how to do this within the pace of my evening. Cause we run all the stuff on Mavs Moneyball too. So I'm like, monitoring the website, trying to get all this stuff done before, and I don't want to go to bed at 2 a.m. every night. So it's fun, like figuring out what is a workable rhythm. I like doing these shows a lot, but it does take me like 2 or 3 of them until I get like used to what, because it's people get, you get the notifications on your phone, but then people don't necessarily come in immediately. And with the old shows, and I don't remember if you joined the Spotify green rooms, those would pop.
Yes. Spotify Live. I was in those.
Yeah, the Spotify Live. Those would populate with like 100 people within a few minutes. And so with these, it's a little bit of a different pace, and that's fine. And I just got to get used to it. Where I'm I need to be more prepared for the early part of the show to kind of talk to myself until folks get in here. Yeah, but I'm really, what'd you think of tonight?
Here, I mean, pretty much keeping up with all sports right now. Being a DFW sports fan is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I felt bad for all the Rangers fans today.
That was tough. And I don't really watch baseball like that because I don't know. That's too roller coaster for me.
It's like playoff baseball is like signing up to be hurt in some instances, particularly against a team like Houston, which is just so dang good.
Oh, not just Houston, but like in most sports, by halfway, you're not on that level.
Right.
But then you have 3 100-win teams get knocked out in the wild card round.
Right.
Simultaneous.
Which has never happened.
I'd rather know I stink early on, but
yeah.
So, but Yeah, Lively has surprised me. Like, I'm gonna say that. It's not normal for a rookie big to be able to build chemistry with the two co-stars like they have that quick. I don't normally see it. What's your opinion? It's not normal to me.
He still has a lot to learn, but he seems to be processing so quickly and adjusting to the things he needs to get better at. He's not going to be able to set a screen all year. I hope we're all just like used to this. Setting a screen and being like that's just going to be something that takes him a long time because it's art. It is not easy. And one of the things I love, I'm a lapsed big man. It is not easy to do to figure out what the ball handler is going to do. It's a simpatico type thing. And whenever I see folks on social media that really like kind of just hand wave it, there's a reason nobody can do it well. It's like if he gets better at that over the course
people that never played.
Well, or regards themselves, like is really what it comes down to. It's just like some of the folks I know, it's like, it's really easy. You just do this. It's like big men don't get to touch the ball that much. All you're trying to just not fuck up. And offensively, I think he's going to be like today. He had some amazing, he took advantage of situations that the Mavericks guards worked. Like he did a great job with the situations given to him. Defensively is what I'm much more interested in. I know we're excited about the offense and we ought to be, but the defensive awareness is so much more important to how the Mavericks sustain with Luka and Kyrie. Because we know they're going to put up points, but can they stop just enough to be able to hold teams off and, win those 115 to 108 games? Like that's the thing that I think is going to be most interesting. And as I said to Josh Bowe on our show tonight, if you get 24 minutes out of Derek Lively, if he's able to play 20 plus minutes a game, we're in a great spot.
Right. Because there's a different feel. And you even saw it throughout the preseason games. Of course, it's probably is tough with the bigs as far as Minnesota, but is like all the preseason games that we played, like the first 3 games, people were second guessing on if they was just going to try it.
Mm-hmm.
Where when Powell was in there was no second guessing.
No,
there's a different feel to it. That's why I kept on, I've had this back and forth between, because everybody's throughout the offseason, it doesn't matter. Powell's going to start. I'm like, dude, kid started a rookie big in Milwaukee with identical circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
To where we basically have offense only bigs behind the rookie.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's just so many things. There's elements of this team where things have to work out in a particular way. It's not just one thing. It's multiple things for them to be more successful than they were last year. I've talked about how I think their floor is pretty high because again, they won 38 games despite the season feeling like a train wreck. So what's the difference between 38, 3 more games put you at 500 on the year? I think
tank 3 games.
Oh, and they just had horrible records in certain situations. Luka, I don't think had a single game winner last year, which was they were just so bad and clutch. And it's all you need is 2 to 3 things to go differently, and maybe that Mavericks season is better. And so when I think about that season in comparison to this season, I think the floor is 40 games. It's and that's barring no catastrophic injuries or anything like that. But I also don't think the ceiling is that high. I sort of think the level of variance on this team is 40 to 46 wins because they're just not going to have it's unless certain things really, really, really break right. And maybe they could. I mean, maybe Josh Green becomes a true third superstar. I don't know. I just don't. The way I see the team build is they have a narrow path to success, but they also have a pretty narrow, the path to failure is really difficult too.
All right. I mean, I've said I've put them basically as an 8 seed is where I see them. with the caveat of possibly being a 6, because one or two teams that I think is better than them is going to stink, and that's going to happen. That's going to happen to everybody that's predicting that they don't make the playoffs.
I mean, the Wolves were like projected to be like the best regular season team last year, and they were atrocious.
Who was it?
The Timberwolves. Going into last season, everybody thought the Timberwolves were going to just sort of run roughshod because they were sort of built for regular season success, and they were not, was the answer once people started playing basketball. So, there's certainly things that can go the Mavericks' way.
Right. And like, I really don't want to get pulled into Clippers Kool-Aid again. I might, because it's sad. Like, the only ones that got it worse are the Pelicans. Like, they are, God, something's going on over there.
Yeah.
Something in the water, maybe. I guess that's what Chris said.
That's right.
Oh, they're so bad.
But, what else are you thinking tonight?
That's pretty. At this point, I think Josh Green needs to be a starter.
Okay.
Like, no matter what you're going to do with him, like, if you're going to try to package him, then why are you going to, like, there's a couple of guys that fans probably don't want to get minutes that probably need to get minutes, because if they don't, you're stuck with them. Like, Sacramento ended up having to give us a first-round pick just to take Holmes' contract. You end up with that with your guys.
Right. Well, man,
but that's pretty much where I'm.
Hope you come back multiple times this year. All right.
Will do.
All right. We'll talk soon, Micah. You have a good night.
You too.
All right. Then last, we got my man Krishna. How you doing, Krishna? What's up?
Kirk, how are you?
Okay. I'm good. I've last week or so, I finally sort of eclipsed because every year I go through like my own personal existential crisis of like, why am I doing this? Should I keep doing this? Like, it's not a job. Like, it's never going to be a job. It's a passion project, and I have fun with it. And every time I think I don't want to do it, I'm like, I do. I want to keep talking to people. I want to keep sharing, making Mavs content. I mean, over at Mavs Moneyball, I've hired like 7 or 8 new people, and they're all writing new stuff. And like that gives me energy to keep going. And then once if the Mavericks actually have a reasonably interesting season, which I think we're kind of in store for, I don't want to get too high or too low, but I think it's going to be very different than the past several years. And I'm looking forward to that.
That's very true. I'm glad to hear that at least you're somewhat still interested. I feel like I go through that every single week being a fan of so many teams. It's
like I'm are you a Rangers fan, for example?
God, Kirk.
So
I described it like this. I told Coops on Twitter this. At the end of the season, right? The Rangers were horrific. I'll put it very, very light. Yes. They were really, really bad. And, someone said they described him as a roller coaster. I said, that's not enough to describe him. It's like being in a deprivation tank. And then that deprivation tank is in a cannon, and the cannon launched. And so you're in the air, but you don't know what's killing you. Is it the deprivation tank, or is it you being in midair, being launched from a cannon that's killing you? That's what the Rangers were. Because
signing up for sports is pain.
It is, right? Like, the thing is, very privileged to live in the Dallas area, in the sense like you could follow literally any sport you want to. Like, there's not a lack of abundance of sports to follow. The problem is just, are any of them going to be good? Like, you never know. So that aside, it's also weird because Houston, they are horrible at Houston. Like, I think they're like 4 or 8 games under 500.
You know what that feels like? And again, people are like, well, I'm not here for baseball talk. I hear you. But to bring it back to basketball, well, to bring it back to basketball, in the early to mid 2000s, the Mavericks simply could not get over the Spurs hump. They hurt us as Mavs fans. And if you're old enough to remember, you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I was very young, but like, I like going back to history and like looking at what the expectations were, because like, we look at it now and you don't really understand how good those Spurs teams were, because they're not a very traditional dynasty in the sense like they never won any championships back to back.
No, they just like kept being really good for a long time, and we kept being painfully like not quite as good as them.
Which makes it more ridiculous in my head that like Dirk kept like this team somehow kept winning 50 games. Like that is still a ridiculous thing. I don't know how many teams would be able to do that now because of the level of competitiveness, like, and just talent that's in the league. But like, it's like you're saying, right? Like every team has some kind of like obstacle in their way. It's like whether you can get past it. Like I would say like for last year, for the Nuggets, it was just literally their health. Like they just were not healthy for the longest time. It wasn't so much like the team. And for this Mavericks team, I think it's just been talent, right? Like we've just not had the requisite amount of talent that you need around Luka to be competitive in the long term. And like I kind of tweeted this out, and I feel this way strongly, is that it's really fine. It's like it's good, right? It's exciting to me to see players younger than Luka potentially be contributors to this team. Like it is a weird thing to think about. Like Josh being younger than Luka and having a potential role on this team is interesting. And then the same thing with Lively. And I think the reason I personally was higher on Lively than Omax is not because I think one is more talented than the other. I think you can kind of say that, but I think it's the roles that you're asking them to play in are very different.
Sure.
Whereas I think Lively has kind of already been prepped to play as a defensive center with little offensive, like less offensive responsibility. Whereas Omax, I think if you're going to be a wing in the NBA now, and I was just watching a video about how like the NBA as a whole has gotten less diverse in the size of players. Everyone is kind of like 6'5", 6'6", and so you kind of have to have an offensive game if you're in that range. And so I think Omax is Omax has a larger gap to get to that point than I think Lively does to being a rim running like defensive center, if that makes sense. And I think that's what's still positive, right? Is that you have guys who you have a belief and a faith in that they can do these things still. And that's where I'm a little bit more positive that I think Lively can have a bigger impact first, but I don't think it means Omax can't do anything. And I also don't think it means Omax is nothing, right? Like even if he is, that's the reason you draft players, is you want to take a potential, you want to take a chance, right? And we're not even talking about like a top 5 pick. We're talking about the 24th pick in the draft. Like that's fine. And it's so early. Like you think about like Jaden Hardy, even last season, right? Jaden Hardy looked horrific in the summer league, and he didn't do anything at all at the beginning of the season until he went to the Legends. And so it takes time, and like you don't know what career paths are, because Josh, I think, was mentioning on Twitter, and Josh Green, I think, was shooting like 19% from 3 on like less than one
it was so bad.
A game.
His rookie year, it was 16%. I remember this.
Yeah. It was really bad. And even worse than that, he was not good at shooting around the rim. Like he was not getting to the rim.
Kind of not good at anything.
Yeah. And the thing was, like, you look back and you realize like the guy was so young, like as a basketball player, right? As an athlete, like I think he was fine. Like athletically, he was really gifted, but he didn't have the basketball skills and the tangibility to like go and actually use his ability to like get to the rim properly. And so, I think Tim Cato kind of mentioned it last season. The fact that Josh not only improved his 3-point shooting, but was just way better and more confident going to the rim and actually completing his chances at the rim was the more shocking thing. And I think you just never know, right? Like we like to think development is super linear or like it's going to happen in this way, but you just don't know. So it's why I'm not super like over the top about it. But what makes me excited really for the season is it's going to be interesting to see what happens. To me, more than the players, like worrying about this player, that player, I'm more worried about the coaching. Because last season I felt this way, and I still am not 100% sure how. I was worried about Igor Kokoshkov leaving as the one of the assistant coaches, and then I think Greg St. Jean.
Yeah, he left at the end of the year.
Yeah, taking over, mostly because, I don't think St. Jean is a bad person or like a terrible coach. I just felt like, is he going to be trusted to do that? Because what we've seen so far from Jason Kidd as a head coach, like now and even back then, is I don't think Jason Coach has the tactical like understanding that the really great coaches do. Like, and we've talked about, I feel like we had this conversation last season too. Great coaching is not for superstar players, really. Like, coaching for superstar players is more about managing their personality and getting them to not like explode when they're on the court, right? Like play within themselves in a way. Whereas coaching for everyone else is getting them roles and making them feel comfortable in the roles that they are in, and then being confident in, essentially doing their job, right? Like the Bill Belichick thing. And I feel like it worked that first year because Kokoshkov like did enough with the offense. Like it was just very basic for everyone else. And Sweeney did a really good job of just like putting defensive schemes together. And it's not to say Kidd did nothing, but it's that you can see Kidd needs stronger help on his bench. And so it'll be interesting to see. I think Armstrong is now the other assistant coach. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But I think maybe Terry Stotts is out there. It's kind of something I was thinking about, but who knows?
Coaching of it is going to be a thing only if the Mavericks come out and look unprepared to start the year.
Yes.
So and that's why it's on everybody. Like the Mavericks just need to get off to a better start. The last time they got off to a very good start was 2019-2020, where they started out the gate 16-5. Like they were outstanding. And I want to say that it might have even been like 18-7 at one point. Like they were so good. And obviously I don't expect that kind of start this year, but what I don't want is like 4-6 to start the year. I know it's a little thing to people because I said something one show where I was like, if they started the year 6-4, I'm going to be ecstatic. And somebody's like, well, that's not very good. And it's like, well, that's 60% of your game. So it actually is pretty good. And I just want some emphatic wins, and I want the Mavericks to look like they have a plan which they are enacting. And what the past several starts to the year have been so chock full of experimentation, but then not only like experimentation which was bad from the start. Like the JaVale McGee of it all cannot be emphasized how stupid that was. It just was. Like it was stupid on paper. It was stupid to everybody but the Mavericks. And so if they can get out of their own way to a degree and just start the year in a reasonable spot, play just good enough defense. Like one thing I will give Kidd credit, particularly in his first year with the Mavericks, is that I feel like the team improved in a trajectory that wasn't like unsustainable, because over an 82 game year, you want to have improvements in areas for growth. Like we saw that with Hardy, for example, last year. Like the team wasn't particularly good, but there was growth in Hardy that should have, left people feeling excited. And so I just hope that there's an element of that this year where the Mavericks can look better at the things that they're trying to improve upon as the year goes on. And maybe, maybe we'll be rewarded. Who knows?
Like kind of what you've mentioned is that the things where I think I get really frustrated with this team is not when you go and you lose to the Nuggets, right? It's when you lose to the Nuggets when they don't have their best players. Mm-hmm. That's when it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you have even a margin of expectation against teams that are not good and you don't win. Like that's where it's frustrating, right? It's not frustrating when you go to Boston and you lose. Like Boston, for as many problems as they have, they're still a talented team. And now it feels like there's kind of a lack of excuses in terms of, Kidd ever saying, oh, I don't have options, I don't have this. I think that's just kind of not there anymore. And he can kind of use the excuse for a young team. I mean, that's more true now than ever. But that's not entirely true still. A lot of these guys still have NBA experience, have had experience on different teams in different situations. So to me, I get what you're saying, right? I agree with you that everyone has to come together. I think to me, for me personally, is the biggest concern more than the players, because I think the players are good enough to be a good team to not make the play in and, be a 6 seed or a little bit above if they need to. It's just that's my biggest concern. But like you said, we have to see what it looks like. In a way, it's a very tough first game because, Wemby could, I don't want to, knock on wood, but, Wemby could like destroy Lively and we'd be all like, oh, the sky is falling. But it's also like, you're not really facing that many players like Wemby. And so it's also, but that the rest of that team is not good. So, and we just don't know what it's going to look like. And I think it's fine that, okay, like we're not going to go 0-4. That's in the preseason. That was good. One step away, but it's a wait and see game. And that's the frustrating thing as a fan. Like, I don't want to wait. I really do just want to get started. And I wish like we were already in the playoffs, but like, that's the thing with an 82 game season is unfortunately you have to go through 82 games until you really understand what this team is. And even at some points you don't, because like you mentioned, like the defense like the defense just kind of was a weird thing in that season, the 22 season, where like you talked about it so much, is after New Year's, they just started winning at a ridiculous clip, like close to 60 or 70%.
70%.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then even their defense, like that translated to the playoffs. Now, it didn't translate all the way to the conference finals, but it's what kept them in games all the way until they got to that point. And so I agree with you. I don't want to see dumb experimentation where we're seeing Josh Green start one game and then bench the other. And then, Dante is starting a game and then he's not. And it's like, if you're going to experiment, I feel like it needs to be very minimal, right? It can't be something that is so seismic and it feels like it's like you can't do a 180 for every single experimentation, right? It needs to be like minute adjustments. And I hope that it happens. I don't know if it will, but that's kind of the whole thing, is like, there needs to be a lot of like hope, and we got to wait and see. But I'm more positive than I've ever been. And I think part of it is just that for once, I don't feel like going into a season being like, deluding myself almost like that. Oh, this player is going to do that, because a lot of those players that we had to delude ourselves about, I feel like have lesser roles in a way. And I think that's a positive thing. So hope it's already getting late. So I'm going to let you guys hang out, and good night.
All right. Thanks, Krishna. We'll see you next time. All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the season. We're here. We have 5 days? Yeah. So they play on Wednesday, San Antonio Spurs. I will say I love that 7 p.m. start time. I really wish the Mavericks would adopt that. Cuban won't do it. Something about Dallas traffic and the way the city's organized. You start the game at 7, people will get there at 7. You start the game at 7:30, they're going to get, fans never get to games sometimes, just kind of the nature of things. I wish they would do 7:00 starts, but here we are. All right. Lighter show. Preseason is what it is. Appreciate those of you who are hanging out. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate it. We'll do better next time, because I'm still getting my sea legs on this sort of thing. And hope everybody has a great weekend. Please continue to roll on over to mavsmoneyball.com, where we will have, we already got a bunch of stuff, post-game stuff up, but then, in these next few preseason days before the season starts, we should have some interesting content, because now we're really in it. All right, guys, my name's Kirk Henderson. Thanks so much for listening to the show, and we will, and watching the show. We will talk to you guys on Wednesday night. All right, bye, guys. Go Mavs.